Hello, Anna.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I'm really happy that you've come on. I've read your book, which is here, Soft Tissue Damage. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank
Really
you.
thoroughly enjoyed it. And it actually reminded me of another book which has a similar theme, which when I used to write for boxing websites a few years ago, I actually interviewed a woman about a similar book she'd written. But I'll explain more of that in the as we go on. But first of all, for those who don't know you, can you just explain a little bit about yourself and what led you to write the book?
Sure. So this is my second book. It's nonfiction. So it's based and centered around the death of my mother, and I suppose more so the nursing of my mother, when she was dying of lung cancer, and how the period of grief was broken up, I suppose broken down and negotiated by my my relationship to boxing, which started off as training and then became more serious and meant two two fights, and how useful that was in terms of my coping with pain, both physical and emotional. And then also ultimately, as I put in the book, ultimately allowing me to return to my mum in some kind of other way, in some other space that I made for that grief.
Cool. So, what was it before we go into like your more personal regards to your mother? Because that's one thing I like about the book, how that juxtaposition between what you go through with your mother and what you go through with regards to boxing and actually training and then later sparring and fighting. But why is it about boxing that attracts you to the sport in the first place?
As I've so I suppose I've always been interested in boxing, because my granddad was a boxer,
Okay.
just amateur in East London. But actually boxing, he did do amateur boxing, but he was also a young boy in East London in sort of, I guess, the early 1920s. And his dad took him down to the Crown and Manor Boys Club because he was getting beaten up all the time. And my great granddad was working a lot and needed somewhere for him to be safe and looked after. And that boys club was absolutely sort of fundamental to his growth and development and selfhood. And he became a PT in the army and then a teacher, and then never ever spoke about boxing ever again until he was dying. And I got very sort of interested in it then. And that became the big influence on the first novel, Boxer Handsome. Because the culture of it was so outside of my own at this point, but I was fascinated in how it had shaped my granddad's life so much, and with such, so positively. It had given granddad so much, which of course gave my mum so much, which of course gave me so much. So it was a kind of real point, an access point, I guess, to a world so apart from mine, but so integrated into who I was and who I am, without me having any real kind of knowledge of granddad's childhood. So that was my interest. Um, so yeah, family history, I guess, in short. And then the fact that it sort of became part of my life actively, and I got sort of stuck in to training. It felt like quite a natural thing to do, to walk into a boxing gym. But yeah, the shift from training to actually fighting was a massive leap. I'm not going to pretend that was natural at all. That was a huge shift psychologically as well.
So, what led you to actually go into a boxing gym in the first place? Because there's also a difference between having an interest and then actively
Hmm.
participating in that interest.
So I'd gone into a few boxing gyms, sort of very kind of, you know, as a spectator. When I wrote the first book, I used to sit in Repton, on a stall watching people spar and taking notes. And I went to fights at York Hall. My daughter's father was a boxer, knew a lot about boxing, and I used to go with him to watch fights. So I was sort of familiar with it, but I was actually at my daughter's ballet class when my would-be trainer walked in, And there was a big white collar fight night happening there, and all these women kept walking in, and they looked incredible, and they were braided up and serious and completely focused and so strong looking. And I was like, what's going on? And someone said there's a big fight night. And then yeah, I think I went up to my would-be trainer and said, what's going on? And he joked and said, there's a big fight. Would you like to fight? And I sort of laughed, but then it sort of became, you know, oh, where is this gym? Where are these fighters from? And it all kind of took off from there. And then I kind of took the leap of faith and went into the gym and had a different trainer actually, and started, I'll never forget, I started, he made me shadow box, which was the most terrifying thing I've ever done, actually. Um, because you're completely vulnerable and sort of open and exposed and looking ridiculous and very silly, because if you can't box, you can't really shadow box. But it was a real way of just kind of going, okay, there's the ring, see if you can, you know, see if you can let yourself go. And from there, it sort of, it became my life slowly. And of course, it's one of those things, the more you do it, the better you get. You start to learn how to punch properly, you start to learn how to move your body, and all of a sudden it's incredibly sort of seductive, letting yourself kind of move that way and you know, hit bags and hit pads and start moving around a ring. And you know, if your body's never done that before, it feels really good to do it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know the feeling. I used to go to boxing gym myself,
Mm-hmm.
so I do know the feeling. But you said there about shadow boxing and the
Yeah.
nervousness you felt. Was there anything else when you first entered the gym that made you feel nervous or shocked you?
No, I wasn't shocked by anything. I was just it was more self-conscious. I think what's interesting about a boxing gym is you think, you know, as a woman, you're going to walk in, it's going to be like, oh, there's a woman walking in. Well, first of all, there are other women there as well. And also no one cares. This was the brilliant thing about a boxing gym. Sorry. You walk in and no one's paying attention to you. Everybody's focused on what they're doing. And that's really lovely too, you know, when you walk into a gym and you feel like you can also then have your own space, have your own kind of quiet, have your own, you know, that you can be sort of fairly unbothered when you're training. That's what was very nice as a surprise when I walked into the gym. Um, that you think everybody's going to be looking at you kind of failing to shadow box in the middle of a ring. No one's looking at you at all. No one cares because they're just busy kind of finessing what they're doing or working on what they're doing. And it was a tiny gym as well. So it was incredibly kind of intimate and sweaty. And you could really kind of smell all the kind of bodies in there working really hard, but completely sort of, you know, people would joke and have fun, but there was no one was making fun of you, no one was laughing at you, really. No one sort of cared, other than that you were there, and that there was some kind of very quiet, it was a kind of quiet support that went on in that gym actually.
Well, this is going to be my next point because, as I mentioned to you at the beginning, even just before we started, I
Mm.
interviewed on one of the boxing websites who, like yourself, had started boxing and talks about what you're saying. The main
Yeah.
difference is she was in her mid-50s when she started.
Uh-huh.
So I think she initially went to a boxing gym, well, it's supposed to be a weights gym, lost her way and ended up in a boxing gym. And,
Right.
and she had the same experiences as you, the nervousness, whether her age should be able to do it, those
Yeah.
movements in particular. But one of the things she mentioned, and I've also had this with other gyms, regardless of are in the country, whether in a bad neighborhood or a middle class neighborhood, is the camaraderie within those gyms
Mm.
because you're all in it together. You're all trying learning to defend yourself. You're all basically getting hit and so on and so forth. Was that
Mm.
the same with you? That yes, there was a quiet support, but all this camaraderie that everyone wanted to see you do well.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, the trainer, the owner of the gym, everybody has a nickname. Everybody has a nickname. Um, it's all it's all really sort of, if you're in this gym, you're working as a collective. You're part of the gym. That's your identity too. So even though you're working alone and you're building yourself on your own, essentially, you're all kind of sharing trainers. You're going to end up sparring each other, hugging each other afterwards. Um, it's all, you need each other to get better as well, because it is lonely, because you are essentially doing it by yourself and your growth is yours. So you can't compare. And also, it's interesting with boxing because every boxing is the body, right? So if
Mhm.
you're a tall, lean boxer, that's your style. If you're a chunkier, shorter, bigger boxer, that's your so everybody's body is doing what it should be doing in the ring. And so there's no real that sense of competition isn't, I didn't feel that. It was only, just how kind of sort of, unless it came to sparring, of course, then there was that sort of tension. But I think everybody knows how lonely boxing can be who's doing it, and everybody knows how exposing it can be, and everybody knows that feeling of defeat after a bad spar, that feeling of kind of sort of feeling low if you haven't done what you thought you could do, and also the thrill of having a really good day, a really good spar, coming out on top, getting the better of somebody else. And all of that is part of it. And I think that's why, unless it's a particular kind of sport in that way, because you are so essentially on your own doing it. That kind of collective is really necessary, I think, for the atmosphere of a good gym.
Oh. You mentioned nicknames there. Did you have a nickname?
I did, yeah. I had two. Um, one of them was the journalist from Superman, Lewis
Lewis
Lane.
Lane.
I was saying, yeah. Because I'd written some articles for various places. So that was the kind of that became my name, which was fine, funny. There also, yeah, and it was actually probably easier to be a bit performative in that way. So, you know, not being Anna and being somebody else when I came into the gym was probably quite useful actually.
You also, correct me if I'm wrong, you've written for Boxing News as well, is that
I
correct?
have, yeah, yeah.
Cool. Was that more features or ring or match reports that you?
So it was features. So I did a couple of pieces on Zach Chelly,
Yeah.
and then I did quite a big piece on Michaela Mayer, which was my favorite piece to write because she's my favorite boxer. So I was really, really pleased to have got that one. That was great.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned Maya a lot in the book as well, how you inspired by her and
Mm.
whatnot. Um, because you talked about the biomechanics of boxing and the
Mm.
tour and the chubby and whatnot. With Maya being your favorite, did you initially think, oh, I might try to model my style on her, or was it just a case of just go with the flow, see where you got to?
Um, I mean, I would love to model my style on her. It was that I mean, I am. I say I was. It's like it's funny with boxing because we talk about these nicknames. I'm talking about my boxing self in the past, which is interesting to me. I was tall, I suppose, and quite rangy, and I had my arms are pretty long, so my jab was my thing, and I used to be obsessed with the way sort of Maya used her height and her jab, but also how strong she was with it. She didn't kind of just use the jab to kind of keep space and keep people away. She got right in there as well, and I was always sort of really impressed with the fact that she could box and also kind of really get stuck into a fight as well, and how tough and strong she was for her body type. I mean, I know she's got bigger now, but when she was pretty tall and slim when she
Yeah,
started with the Olympics, and so tough, so tough, and really
yeah,
good as well, really skillful.
very skillful. And I don't know if you've heard any of her commentary with Christina Poucher. She's very analytical in terms of what she describes and whatnot.
Yeah, her boxing IQ is really, really high, isn't it? Definitely.
Yeah, I think it was the one fight I watched with her. I think it was Maria Hamanouch, French boxer.
Yeah, the one she
Yeah,
has the best
yeah,
fight ever. I love that fight between the two of them. Yeah.
yeah, very much so. So all this is going on, and then, but obviously, as you said at the beginning, your mum was dying of lung cancer.
Mm.
How was that? How was that affecting you, like in terms of your performance, your training? did it make you focus more because of distraction? Did you make you focus less because you do distracted by what was happening? Like, how did it affect you?
So the timeline, so actually, so the book is structured in a way, so mum's death has already happened, so I'm charting her illness, and then it opens up into the present day of me training and then fighting, and sort of, I guess, attempts to kind of continue my life in various ways. So it was about a year after she died that I started boxing. Um, so the book sort of starts in the present day, yeah, about a year after she died. So, which is pretty recent, I guess, actually, when you think about it, it's been sort of 5 years now. And I think about how raw it must have been at that time, and how I really can't have understood it in any real way. So
Mm.
me walking into boxing was just so clearly, and I can say this in hindsight because this was not conscious at all. And it was all impulse and reaction and response. But if I look back, it was so clearly an attempt to kind of to undo something that was really, really sort of stuck, I think, or just try some. It was a route to something I didn't really understand or know, but then I didn't understand or know what the world was anyway, because mum had gone, and it was just, it was all pretty brutal and raw, I think, when I started boxing.
Yeah, because there's obviously a closeness between you two. So how did you cope with that? Like, because it's not like it's gonna sound horrible, but it's not like say accidents where you end your life because that's more like sudden. It's like this constant knowing that the end is near, so to speak, this closeness. So how
Yeah.
do you cope? How do you cope with that?
It's interesting, yeah, because someone read an article I wrote, and they were like, "God, I didn't know how long she was dying. I didn't know it took her so long." And that was interesting because, yeah, and even if you know someone's going to die, sometimes it's sort of 3 to 6 months. And I'm not saying there's a better or worse thing with the diagnosis, but she was given a year, and then she was here for 2 years, and then she brilliantly managed 3 years, which is very typical of my mum. But at the same time, it was also looking after her for those 3 years, and life had changed, and it was kind of just treatments and chemo and cycles of hurt and treatment and radiotherapy and hospital visits and blood sugars, and then kind of just becoming a nurse for 3 years of my life, which I was a privilege to do that for her. And my sister was part of that too, obviously, and my dad and my daughter, actually. But it was a long, long, long time to watch someone getting smaller and weaker, definitely. And there were moments of kind of, oh, she's strong and she's back to herself. But you always kind of knew that we were just waiting for the next kind of, scan, because every it's 3 months of kind of waiting, and then have another scan, see if it's grown, see if it's moved. And that's what life with cancer is as well. It's not just the kind of beginning and the end. It's this kind of endless pattern and cycle of kind of treatment, scans, waiting to see if anything's changed. And everybody, that's kind of, it's yeah, it's grim.
Yeah, yeah, no, I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine. One of the things you write about, because you've talked about sparring and whatnot,
Mm,
is the bruises you used to have.
mm.
Would you say there was almost a proudness of having those bruises in the sense of it was a badge that you showed that you achieved this, or was it a case of no, 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 I don't want anyone to see you got any bruises. I just want to cover them up as soon as possible.
Oh no, I didn't wear any makeup. I wore them very, very sort of
Okay.
openly. I remember saying to my friend Siobhan, she's a really good boxer. Like I mean, I say I box, but she's proper. I kind of messed, I guess, in her voice note after I got punched in the nose the first time at Spa, and I was like, oh, and she's like, what did she say? She said you're getting your stripes or something. And there was a lovely phrase she used for it, and they are seen as like little, you know, sweet badges of honor, I guess, for everybody, and it's because you know where they came from, and it was sort of something you walked in and were ready for. I mean, you're never quite ready to get hit in the face, I guess. But you know, that's it, you're earning your stripes, she said.
Yeah.
Earning your stripes. And then after the first time, you sort of get used to, they just never go away. And if you're training for a fight and you're in camp, you've just constantly got a shade of bruise on your face because, well, I do anyway, because I was terribly bad at moving my head. But there's always some kind of mark from last week's spar or the spar before that. Do you know what I mean? You're always kind of a little bit green or yellow or
Yeah,
blue
yeah,
or brown, or you know, whatever stage of bruising you're at, or there's a kind of bit of smudge on your eye, you know, there's
yeah.
always something.
Yeah, no, I've done sparring myself, and yeah, first time you get hit, it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all.
No, it's a shock, and you're like, hang on, but I set myself up for this, but it's still like, what?
Yeah,
How's
yeah,
that happened? Yeah.
yeah. But it's a shock. But then you get used to it, and you want more. I imagine. Was that the case with
Yeah,
you?
well, it's the best thing to happen, isn't it? And I put this in the book. It was such a really, it was one of these really profound moments where I'd been hit and I was really shocked. And it wasn't my first, but it was a bit later on. And my daughter's father said, "But does it actually hurt?" And I went, "Oh no." He went, "Are you just shocked, or did it hurt?" And I said, "That's interesting because there is a difference." And I think I was just shocked
Mm.
rather than it hurt really that badly. It wasn't a bad, you know, I was fine really, but it was just shocking to be hit in the face.
Yeah. And speaking of being hit, you actually, when you during the book, you describe how you went to New York
Yeah.
and more they decided to spar in those gyms. What were the two differences between those gyms you were in New York and one you were in the UK?
Mm, size, everything, size, and I guess like you know, boxing where I was boxing in New York, I boxed in two gyms, and style is different. I guess I think you've got like more. Uh, there's a different kind of influence. So there's a different style of boxing. There's obviously like the very English style of boxing, and you've got an Irish style of, but you know, it's depending on the place. So the style was different, different kind of footwork, um, and also different. I mean, the boxing narrative in America is very different to the boxing narrative in England because historically America is America, and England is England, and there's like you know crossover. But the people that were boxing in America historically are different, had different reasons for doing it as well. I mean, it's still poverty, but you know, it's interesting. And I suppose the glamour that was given to American boxers, like sort of, if you look at the posters on the walls, the old school stuff, um, yeah, that was different. But I'd say for when I was there, the style was different. I got told to move my head a lot and move my feet a lot because I was obviously a bit static and a bit kind of grounded. Um, so that was it. I'd say style was the difference I noticed the most. Have you been to American gyms?
No, I've not been to American gyms. I've heard a number of American gyms, and in terms of the differences, like apparently with American gyms, there seems to be a lot more. There's technical work that goes on in spars, but there's also a lot more of a war where as soon as it goes pair against each other, it's more like a contest, and it's almost dog eat dog, so to speak.
Right,
In spar gyms, like the Mayweather gym's a great example of that, apparently, where the
right.
spars are almost very, very competitive. Whereas in the UK, it's not so much like that, although there are exceptions, like the gym that Dillian White runs is apparently similar to that. But it's
Is it?
more, well, yeah, but apparently it's more in American gyms where it's a bit dog eat dog.
Mm.
Whereas Brits, it's more like, oh, you did a good spar and so on and so forth. Whereas there, it's like, no, you're on your own. That's it. You just need to spar and survive it. And like I say, it's a
Ah,
you earn your spikes that way. Yeah.
yeah. Another difference as well, I suppose, is some of the American gyms you'll be walking around, and you'll be like, oh my God, that's so and so. And you can see sort of famous boxers walking in and kind of out again. That's quite sort of like, oh, but you can't, you know, you can't look. You're like, oh my God, that's so
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so. That's interesting about the sparring though. Um, yeah, I suppose that makes sense though, especially for those New York, you know, there's well, yeah, wherever in America, whatever city, there's that kind of it's the American way a bit more, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, do woodwork and well, do work and technique and whatnot, but I say a lot of them here is like dog eat
Mm.
dog, so to speak, in the terms of the sparring. But yeah, it can be a very good
It's more
experience.
aggressive.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Mm.
Can be slick but aggressive at the same time.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah, 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 yeah.
definitely. I've heard, and I experienced this as well. I've heard the ring itself being described, someone described it to me as a truth machine, in the sense of once you're in there, you are fully exposed. It's not like other sports, even individual, where you can hide behind something. It's
Mm.
literally you two, a referee, and that's it, and you feel fully exposed. And
Yeah.
no matter how much bravado you have before the fight and showcase before the fight, once you're in there, that goes, and when your true self comes out. Would that be based on your experiences? Would that be a fair analysis of how you felt when you went to fight for the first time?
Yeah, 100%. I think actually that became incredibly what you just said. That came very true. That came to a real truth in my second fight. I remember talking to one of the brilliant trainers who was there at the time. We were talking about this. Just when you're in the ring, you are utterly exposed for all you are. There is no. It's almost like all the self is magnified. You kind of your shadow self, your present, all of those parts of you become this thing in the ring, and you're on your own, and you can't even sort of, I don't know how you prepare or plan for that. And it was interesting that the second fight I had, I trained and trained and trained and trained and trained, jab, 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 use a jab, use a jab, use a jab, use a jab.
Mm,
And I walked into the ring and my head just went, it was like, I walked in, hundreds of people, and something just flipped where I just went into, no, 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 I'm not going to box. I'm just going to have a fight, see what happens. And I lost. And it was really interesting to see that my temper and my anger and those things that have kind of been maybe buried through grief or whatever had been sort of put down to my basement self
yeah,
suddenly just found life when I was in that fight. And how people don't realize, yes, your body needs to be in really good shape, but your head also needs to be I think, in a fairly kind of steady place, because you can lose control of yourself very quickly in a ring, I think, if you're not.
yeah, very much so, indeed. You spoke about Michaela Meyer being your favorite boxer. Do you have any other boxers who you look up to, especially since you've written a book and actually thought, I like their style, I like how they fight.
Yeah, I liked Chantal Cameron as well. I like her style. Thought she did brilliantly against Katie Taylor in, I don't know, can't remember if it was the second fight or the first.
The first fight she won, yeah,
Yeah, I thought she did. I remember watching that, just thinking how much I enjoyed her style. Um, who else do I really like? I mean, I like some of the older boxers. I used to love, before I started boxing, I used to absolutely love Sugar Ray Leonard. I'd watch is it the Fabulous Four? Him,
yeah,
Hagler, and Hearns, and is it Roberto?
Duran, yeah,
Oh, I used to watch those old fights with so much. They were like, it's like watching art. They were fabulous, those four. And it was almost like who's going to fight who next? It was like which
yeah,
combination am I watching of brilliance? And because each of them was so different in style, whenever they met, something really exciting would happen in the ring. Um, who else? But current day, I'm just thinking about male boxers that interest me. I'm not a massive fan of heavyweight boxing, I must say. I'm not into kind of just slugging. Who's that really good West Country boxer? Is it Chris Billam-Smith?
yes, the cruiserweight, yeah,
Yeah, I like him. Just trying to think who else is around at the moment that I like. Yeah, I like him. Um, I like Liam Cameron as well, actually. I think I like him as a person as
mm,
well. Um, but women, there's that all-female card in New York, isn't there, on July the 11th with I really like Amanda Serrano as well,
yeah,
actually. And I should say this actually, because I think it's worth a mention that one of the women, before I started boxing, I remember reading about Heather Hardy.
Hmm.
who I know is now retired. Um, but I really admired and admire her because she really kind of pushed the door open for a lot of female boxers and fighters. And she was there at kind of at the beginning, so I have a lot of time for her for sure.
Yeah. Similar to Jane Couch, what happened in this country. I don't know if you've read her autobiography.
No, I haven't.
I would I think it's been optioned for TV, but I would highly recommend it. I think
Yeah.
it's called the final round, but it's if you want to know about sexism in boxing in the 90s in Britain, I would recommend that because they talk about the court case where she got a license.
Okay.
Of the boxing official said, and I won't say it on air, but it will make you
I'll
win.
give it a read. Yeah, 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 definitely. That sounds
Yeah,
good. Thank you.
very good. In terms of boxing in general, it could be men's and women's.
Hmm.
What do you think could be improved? Um,
For men and women.
yeah, terms of the professional game, not so much amateur, but professional game.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's so different, isn't it? The amateur and the professional game, they're so different from each other. And
Mm.
I mean, my knowledge is pretty limited, I think. But I know amateur boxing, it's quite a slog up the ranks before you can get, fights that, if you can start mattering, I guess. And
Yeah, yeah,
that's really interesting to me because I know you have to kind of go through like journeyman boxers and it's all, I know it can be really like messed up and corrupt too. And
yeah,
I know all that side of boxing. Um, I think it's what I've noticed, I suppose, in women's boxing is the pool seems to be quite small still.
yeah,
So I mean, I know this happens in men's too, but you'll find, women are kind of going up and down in weight to find
yeah,
opponents. And I feel like so in that way, it still feels a bit like it should be expanding more
yeah,
in that way, that it shouldn't be so small where, you know, you have to drop £10 or go up £10 to meet that person for that belt. And, I just
yeah,
think that's a bit, I guess, yeah, the pool feels quite small for women in boxes. And they have to wait a while before someone comes around to, it's
yeah.
that's just what I've noticed or observed from where I am.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, I think it was 2012 was the first time there was women's boxing in the Olympics.
I mean, when you think of that, it's still so recent, isn't it, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Still recent, although what we think was that 13 years.
mm,
So you would think in certain weight. I mean, it's in older weight, in a higher weights like middleweight above, you probably won't get as many women because on average women aren't that big. But
mm.
in regards to like the lower weights, you're right. Like the pools is still very small. Was
Yeah,
it Natasha Jonas having to go from super feather 9 stone 4 to
yeah,
middle, and Terry Harper did the same as well because the opportunities aren't in and around like the other weight
totally.
classes.
That's another one I love. I love Natasha Jonas. I love her. Absolutely adore her. Everything about her. She's just fabulous. But yeah, and it can't be good for your body to do that so much, can it?
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Especially now because you've got weigh-in today before.
Yeah.
So you weigh in there and then you add in some people had like over a stone overnight. I'm thinking, how on earth can you do that?
Yeah, but the body behaves madly sometimes, doesn't it? If you've been depriving it of one, it will find, yeah, it's that's what I mean about the boxer being their body and how and what that must do though to the mind as well when you're in, that kind of being fixed to a goal that is not necessarily good for your body long term, but you've got to get, it's a lot to go under, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the discipline as well. Just
Which
the
is also the
discipline.
positive of it, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
although some boxers aren't disciplined and then they'll pay the price for it in the ring. Hence the truth machine, you can't get away with that in the ring.
No,
I've,
you
I've,
can't.
heard- I've heard of people like Bernard Hopkins who've done it the opposite way, almost live like a monk
Right.
in that way. There's a story, I think it was Steve Kim who told this, where him, Bernard Hopkins, and someone else went for dinner, and Hopkins ordered some chicken dish, and he thought it was like a normal chicken. It came out breadcrumbs. Oh, I can't have it as a boxer. Literally, he's got a napkin, started scraping off the breadcrumbs, putting it in, scraping off, but because and it was bone dry because that's how disciplined he was. He couldn't have anything like that. So, and that's even more than most sports, if we're honest. The absolute discipline most boxers
I
have.
think it is again because you're essentially and ultimately on your own, aren't you? So it becomes an existence that sort of can become, I suppose, can quite easily overwhelm day to
Mhm.
like your life, you know. I mean, because you're asking yourself to do something which is so kind of extreme, right? And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
and to kind of, I don't know, squaring that up with your, you know, there's your brain has to catch up with that, or your body has to catch up with the brain. You're constantly in the grip of something so about kind of, yes, about discipline, but it also comes with so much, I guess, loneliness, right? I mean, it must be
yeah,
such a lonely thing to just to do that in any serious way.
yeah. Indeed, indeed. Do you still box now?
I do train. I was going to fight at the end of March, but the book came out, and then I was going to. But it's becoming harder and harder, and it's fine. I think it's life. Life is working itself out as it should, but the book's kind of taken over. So finding time to kind of do camp for 8 weeks is becoming harder and harder. Um, but yeah, no, I still box, and I will always box on some level. I think it just matters to me, and it matters to my body. I like it. My body likes it.
That was another thing I noticed in the book, how you talked about how your body became more defined and you saw things which you hadn't seen before and you would stay that way and how much you
Mm.
liked it.
Yeah, it's funny. I just after my fight, I went to meet my friend Grace in Covent Garden. It was sort of days after the fight, and I put on a dress, and I didn't want to wear it. I was like, oh no, I don't want to wear this anymore, and I couldn't get it off because my shoulders had got so big that I couldn't. I literally couldn't take the dress off. So I had to sort of tear it off. I was like, I didn't, you know, and it's the first time I put a dress on. I mean, this is also symbolic, isn't it? Too much, too symbolic. I put a dress on for the first time in about sort of 4 months, and it just didn't fit anymore. Um, and I think that's fine. And I remember just sort of laughing and going, well, that's great. I've got shoulders, and I've still got them. And it's funny when I look at my granddad, I've got exactly his physique, and that makes me quite happy too. That when he, you know, he's got exactly the same shoulders and arms, and I think that's sort of quite a lovely thing to have developed over my lifetime to kind of bear that resemblance to him when he was boxing.
Okay, cool. What's the best fight you've seen on TV and what's the best fight you've seen live?
Ooh, good question. Best fight I've seen on TV. I mean, the Eubank Ben recently was up there. I think that was an amazing fight. I
Yeah.
couldn't get over how good that was. That was like watching the Fabulous Four. It gave me the same feeling. It was just so much skill from two brilliant boxers. The best fight I've seen on TV might be Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran, but that's like because I just love how different their styles are. When I used to watch clips of them from that era. Um, what else? Oh, I remember when I was very heavily pregnant, I watched the Groves and oh, I've completely my brain's gone. Who the
Clutch.
knockout? Yeah, that one. So that must have been
Yeah.
what 2014.
Gosh. Yes, roughly. Yes,
Yeah,
roughly.
because it was just before my daughter was born, and I was in Montenegro and lying there like a whale, and I remember just staying up to watch that with my daughter's dad, and that was a great fight. So and my mum actually emailed me about she was watching it as well, and she went, "Oh my God, Grace just got knocked out." Yeah, that was a good fight, really good fight.
Cool. What did your mum feel about boxing?
She didn't have the kind of she wasn't as excited about it because she'd grown up, and she was East London too. She'd grown up around that culture, and all her family were like, in pubs and part of that. And it wasn't that interesting to her in the way it was to me. Like, she was my granddad's daughter. She'd seen that world. She grew up in it. She's born in Clapton. Um, but and then all her other family were from Tottenham. So it was a whole, she had that already. So she didn't care about it in the way I did, but she also didn't mind it, she wasn't against boxing. She liked, she would have definitely like she liked to watch a fight. Whether she would have wanted to watch me fight, I don't know. Probably not. But I think I was asked this the other day at a reading, and someone said, would your mum have liked what you're doing? And I said, probably not, but she'd have absolutely been there. And she would have never not watched it. She'd have been cheering me. Whereas my dad just absolutely will not go near it. But my mum would have absolutely been there and had a table and been shouting for me to probably try and knock her out or something, knowing my mum.
Um, I was gonna say you've had two fights, isn't it? You've had?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I could say. So when was your last fight?
God, ages ago now. 2023, 2022. What are we now? 2000. Yeah, that's about right, I think.
3 years ago.
Or was it 2023? It was one of those. I should remember. It was about 2 or 3. Yeah, because the book took a couple of years to write, and I had to stop. Yeah, I think it was 2023.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah, it's a couple of years ago, and then hopefully you're looking to fight again soon, and then hopefully that muscle memory will quick in and you'll get back.
Yeah, I think if I just start sparring again, it might come back. It's interesting though, because um I had my first spar a couple of months ago, and it took me ages to kind of work myself up to going back into the ring. It was really nerve-wracking. Because your body remembers, but it also remembers that feeling of like, can I, it's funny. But it's
Mm-hmm.
good because it's sort of like riding a horse, isn't it? You have to do it again.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. So, how long do you think you'll keep boxing for? When I say boxing, I'm not just talking training. I'm talking actually getting in the ring. Just one
I'll,
couple more fights, and that's it.
I'll train and spar as long as my body can do it. And I'll fight if my head's in the right place to do it, I think. I think the training and the sparring is sort of forever. Having a fight, I've got nearly, my daughter's nearly 11. I'm in a new relationship now. Well, it's not that new, but fairly. I'm a very different woman to who I was the year after my mum died. And maybe there was a time and a place for me to be in that headspace where it felt essential to go through those cycles of pain and fighting and conflict and then resolve as well. I
Mm,
don't know at the moment if I'm because you have to want to be able to fight as well. This is another
mm,
thing, right? That it's
mm,
not about wanting, it's not, you don't have to be like a violent person, but you have to be able to and prepared to fight back, or to box back and be part of that arrangement. And I don't
yeah.
know if and that is different to sparring. Sparring is kind of, I always felt like sparring was a real like IQ thing. You could really work out who
Yeah.
you were with sparring without the pressure of the fight, which kind of
Mhm.
changed things so much. Sparring is kind of like a game of chess in a way. It's really good for your brain.
Mhm.
Um, Fighting is a whole different thing. I mean, it's not. It should also be a kind of skill set game of chess thing, but it does feel different to me. And I think your head has to be in a place to fight. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Have you had fights?
I never had fights. I sparred quite a lot.
Mm.
I used to have spars where, and I imagine you've had this too, where you'll spar around with someone and then they would keep on replacing your opponent each round. So,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And so by the end, because I was a heavyweight, still am a heavyweight,
Oh,
so you can imagine I'm logging around the ring. And when I first started sparring, I used to it was around about time Ricky Hatton was at his peak. I think it's just before he fought Costa Zoo. So that's who I was trying to fight like, and I'll be bouncing around. And with my weight, I was knackered. I was knackered within a couple of minutes because I'm carrying all his body weight with that style. So had to change. But in terms of sparring, it was a unique experience because the first person I sparred with was actually a lot shorter than me. So I'm like jabbing down and they were just getting underneath me and hitting me and whatnot. But then it's something you do get used to.
Jumping down's really hard though, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've never enjoyed sparring shorter people, to be honest.
No,
So I don't like, I'm because of the body, yeah, because I don't like, yes, I find it hard.
yeah, yeah. It's just hard. And plus, he was so fast as well when doing
Right.
it. And even though my footwork improved, those first few spars, he hadn't. So
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
quickly, I'll jab and then be lazy with the jab instead of put it back. And then you'd be on minutes and sitting
Yeah.
me. And so it was very tough for sure. But then I stopped. I mean, I still write about the sport and I still love the sport, but for personal reasons, I stopped about 14 years ago
Mm,
for various things that happened after that.
yeah.
Although I did meet my trainer a couple of years ago after all that time, and it was a pleasant chat. Just bumped into him and so on and so forth because he used to be a sparring partner for, one particular British boxer, David Hay. He used to be David
Oh
Hay.
yeah. Yeah.
He was one of his sparring partners when he fought Nikolai Valuev. So he was very good as a coach himself. And yeah, so he was his sessions are good, but it's just personal reasons why I had to stop. Although I still write about the sport and I still do enjoy it. And who knows, hopefully I do other stuff to keep fit now, but who knows, I'll want to get back into it and write about and
Yeah.
participate in the sport and so on and so forth.
Yeah. It's a real commitment, isn't it? It's a real leap into doing to yeah, you've got to really decide that things are okay, things are all in place for you to do it, I think, definitely.
Cool. Just quickly, you say there about boxing and you're a different person from when you boxed to when you were before. In what ways has boxing changed you in terms of your personality and just you personally?
It's let me know that I'm fairly that I can that I can fight, that I
Mm,
can look after myself, that I can walk into spaces and hold my body in that space in a way that I never used to be able to. And I suppose something that's the obvious thing is that I can heal. So all those things that I went through, I got better. And
yeah,
that's really interesting. So all that pain stopped being pain and all those bruises faded and the nose is still a bit funny, I think. But yeah, other than, this the superficial stuff, it goes, you know.
indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about yourself in terms of your writing? Obviously, I thoroughly enjoyed the book and I'm glad you're getting good reviews for it. But what about your own writing? Have you got ideas for another book? Is it going to be boxing based? Is it going to be away from boxing? Like, what are your plans writing wise?
I think I have to move away from boxing really for the third one. I think really if I look back, the first book was really about all my interest in boxing, and the second book was me being the boxer, which is interesting. And they're both sort of around my family. The first is granddad, second is mum.
Mm,
I think the third one, I don't know what I'm going to write about yet. I think I've got some ideas, but I'm just letting them sort of mull around. But it will be a departure from boxing, but it may not be a departure from kind of that idea of conflict. And I'm sure there'll be violence, and I'm sure there'll be some kind of, you know, some sense of kind of pain, pain threshold in it, or kind of the ways, we speak about pain or exhibit pain or heal from pain will almost certainly be in it on some level.
yeah, indeed. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Pleasure talking to a fellow boxing fan. If people want to find out more about your work and your writings, where can I go to?
Rough Trade Books would be the best place. I have obviously social media, and I have a website which I definitely need to update. But yeah, I would say for book stuff, go to Rough Trade or Conville and Walsh, my agency as well. So, but yeah, I mean, or social media, Instagram.
Cool. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for
Thank you
coming on
so
today.
much for having
Again,
me. It was lovely to chat about boxing. I always love
likewise.
a good chat about boxing. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.